When I was 13 years old, my father and I would take daily trips to our local laundromat to do our drying, because while we had a washing machine at home, our dryer had died and we couldn't afford to get a new one. Usually we'd just sit in the car in the parking lot and listen to the radio or go for a drive along the river. However, with the winter weather quickly approaching, my father needed to get some new wiper blades for his windshield wipers and decided to drive up the road to Walmart. While he went to the automotive section, I decided to go over to the books and magazines to see if they had anything that interested me. As I perused the shelves looking at the graphic novels and paperback books, I heard a kind of soft sobbing coming from behind me. I walked to the end of the aisle and saw the source was a guy a few aisles over, sitting on the bench near the pharmacy section. He saw me looking at him and stood up and moved down an adjacent aisle. Returning to what I was doing, I decided on getting Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 3 titled Double Trouble, and I was about to join my father in the automotive section when he texted me and asked me to grab him some deodorant from Health and Beauty. I walked down the few aisles to the Health and Beauty section, and that's when I saw the guy again. He was just standing there staring at the shaving cream, still sobbing. Then I just shook my head and grabbed a thing of Old Spice deodorant, my father's brand, and was about to leave when I heard a loud huffing sound followed by a loud grunting. I turned to see the sad guy standing there, holding a razor blade in his left hand and blood pouring from the wrist of his right arm. I immediately ran from the aisle, looking for someone, and found an employee nearby stocking shelves. "Help!" I shouted, pointing to the Health and Beauty section. "A guy just slit his wrist over there." The next several minutes were a blur of employees and paramedics who rushed over to help the guy, and my father and I watched as he was wheeled out on a stretcher and loaded into the ambulance. According to the newspaper, a few days later the guy survived his suicide attempt, having sliced horizontally instead of vertically. Turns out he had been newly divorced from his wife of 10 years and didn't want to be alone. I hope that he got the help that he needed and didn't try to kill himself again. This happened to me when I was in college. I was back home for semester break, and I was looking forward to a couple of weeks of hanging out with my friends and family. Since I had arrived at home quite early in the morning and spent most of the time talking to my parents and hanging out with a couple of my friends, and I didn't get much sleep during the travel, I was very drowsy after my lunch. I sunk into bed for a relaxing nap. Just a bit of context, we live in a small apartment building with 9 flats, and all of the families living here are very close to each other. Now comes the weird part. I probably started dreaming the minute I dozed off. I could see myself asleep on the bed and the whole bedroom as if I was floating in the air. I was watching the whole scene from a third person's perspective. Suddenly, a huge black smoky mass started coming out of my chest. I oddly remembered me comparing it to a large alligator made of smoke. It started as small puffs of black smoke, but it grew larger as more and more stuff started coming out. Was it possible for something to be made of smoke and yet be slimy? I started freaking the heck out. Should I try to push it back inside or get rid of it? All I could do was helplessly watch as it started floating outside my room through the closed door. I followed it to the living room and out of the apartment. Both of us could pass through the walls. When it reached the common space outside the apartment, we were suddenly stopped by an old lady standing in front of my neighbor's door. Since it was a dream, all I could gather from the old lady was that she was quite tall, at least 6 feet, and had flowing silver white hair. Both me and the smoke entity stopped abruptly. We could feel her stern gaze on us, controlling us. All she said was, "Now is not the time. Get back inside." I could sense great beauty from her, and yet some sort of fathomless evil lurking behind the stern matronly figure. I watched as the smoke entity floated back into my apartment and then into my body through my chest. In an instant, I woke up, back in my body. The sheets were drenched in my sweat. I automatically clenched my chest as if expecting to find an opening there. Everything was normal. The afternoon sunlight making its way into my room through the window, music from a distant radio somewhere in the building, and the sound of my mom working in the kitchen. Now comes the weirdest part. I spent all afternoon watching TV and playing video games. The shock from the dream had almost worn off when the man living in the neighboring apartment came in to borrow a tool. We joked around a bit and talked about college. When he was about to leave, he mentioned his mother is visiting for a couple of days. I could feel my heart skipping a beat. The lady in the dream was standing in front of his door. I made an excuse of wanting to say hello. It was normal in our building, and went with him to his apartment. There she was, a tall maternal figure with flowing silver hair. Even though I didn't see her face in the dream, I felt the same commanding presence from the old lady. She was a head mistress for a private school for many years before retiring and moving back near her son. I didn't get a sense of her knowing about the dream or if she had seen anything out of the ordinary. We talked for a bit, and I made an excuse to return to my apartment. I went back to college after the break and did not see her again. I later got the news that she had passed away after a year. Whenever I'm visiting my parents' place, I'm reminded of that odd afternoon dream. A lot of creepy, unexplainable things happened to me. My earliest memory of these strange events took place when I was probably around 4. I frequently slept in my parents' bedroom because I was too afraid to sleep on my own. On one of these nights, I had gone to bed early and my parents were watching TV in the living room. I was sitting up in bed watching some cartoons. The bathroom was to the right of the bedroom, and if you were lying in bed, it was directly in front of you. On this night, the door had been left open. I remember staring into the dark bathroom and feeling as if something was watching me. I lowered the volume on the TV and sat there in silence for many minutes. Then, I heard a faint whisper of my name emanating from the open bathroom. I sat frozen with fear for no telling how long until I finally got up and ran into the living room with my parents. Around this age, I also started having strange dreams. Once, I was partially awake and saw a little girl standing in the hallway. When I was sleeping in my parents' room, I woke up and saw a womanly figure walking towards my dad's side of the bed. As I got older, these dreams or visions turned into sleep paralysis. The most vivid and terrifying of these experiences still haunts me to this very day. I was experiencing sleep paralysis for probably the second time that week. I was lying there, and there was a very pale, skinny woman with cold, angry eyes standing above me. She began to run her finger up my back with her razor-sharp nails. When I was able to move and awaken fully, I stood up and ran to the mirror. When I lifted my shirt, I was horrified. There was a very distinct scratch running up my back. I checked my bed for any possible source, but there was nothing.